Welcome. In this class we'll start with the 2013 paper 2. We have already covered paper 1 section A and B in separate lectures. Now the first question deals with map location. We have covered map location starting from 1997 to 2015. We have covered all the map locations at this website, so you can just refer that. The next question is the topographical and structural characteristics of shivaliks. Now this is a very direct question. We have covered this under the physiography of India. You can refer the lecture here. Now, what is the main aspect that you need to explain here is, besides explaining about shivaliks, you need to explain that shivaliks is composed of two ranges, the north and the south. The north is mainly filled with dunes. They are mainly dunes which is filled with gravels which are known as Antagiri. The whole of the shivaliks which are known as Upgiris. They have formations of lakes and tals which are known as mainly Bhimtal and Nainital lake in the north, and in the south you have steep scrubs that exist. Overall the vegetation is mainly in the form of poor scrub forest. The next question is again a very direct question explaining the mechanism of monsoon. You can refer this link for details here. The next is identify the main industrial clusters and account for their development. So these are some of the major industrial clusters. We have tried to explain the industrial clusters under 7 heads. Now when you are trying to account for their development, for example, I'll discuss one of those. For example, we talk about Hooghly. So Hooghly is the region in West Bengal. It's close to the port. So nearby vicinity to the port leads to easy transportation. Again, you have another important aspect is the jute industry that exists here. Similarly, in the Ahmedabad-Vadodara region, I can say because of the cotton textile region, you have a lot of development that has incurred in this area. So these are the main industrial clusters of India, and you need to explain the key highlights for each of those. When we talk about the crop association regions, you must refer this video, and what we try to explain here is mainly the weavers and the Dois concept. The idea is whether the region is suitable for a single crop or two crop like maize and wheat, or a kind of multiple cropping system that exists in that region. The next is the potentiality and present status of horticulture in western and central Himalayas. Now to understand this, I can say we can draw Himalayas as western and central. Under western I will include Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. Under central we will include Uttarakhand or Uttaranchal. Now when we talk about central Himalayas, in Uttarakhand the main is the Pindar Valley. When we talk about Jammu and Kashmir, it's mainly the Kashmir Valley. Under Himachal Pradesh, it's mainly Kullu and Kinnaur region. Now understanding this, we have Uttarakhand region which is rich in citrus fruits and vegetables. When it comes to Himachal Pradesh and Jammu Kashmir, it's mainly apples, walnuts and peas that exist here. And now we understand the reasons for these. So they are mainly attributed to the economic and the environmental reasons. You have the government subsidies that are present, and they are linked to the growth of the horticulture industry is linked to the market demand in the region. Now the next question talks about the coal fields. We have the following list of coal fields that exist in India. So I have tried to demarcate most of these here. You have the upper Gondwana that exists in Gujarat. However, most of the India you have mainly the Permian deposits, and they are classified into upper and lower. When we talk about upper, it's mainly the Raniganj. When we talk about lower Permian, it's mainly the Barkar range and the Karhar Bari range. So these are the two basic categories under which you have the classification for coal fields and the major areas in India with the coal fields. The next question is role of multinational companies in globalization. After 1991, India opened up for the kind of LPG reform, that was liberalization, privatization and globalization under the 1991 reforms. And when we talk about multinational company, it is a company which has production centers in more than one nation. It is mainly governed by cheap labor, close market proximity and liberal government policies. So what it tries to basically do is it tries to convert world into a small village. So that's these all aspects you have to explain under the multinational companies here. The next question is a kind of very interesting question which requires critical understanding. So what is important to understand here that Previously, when we talk about industrial development, we say there are industrial regions or industrial centers that exist in India. However, now it has been kind of changing a trend. There has been a change in the trend, and what is important to understand is you have development of footloose industry. For example, let's say software industry. So you do not need kind of specific raw material or specific finished product. So based on which you can apply the Weber's theory or the industrial location theories. So what is basically an idea for a footloose industry is it could be established anywhere irrespective of the raw material and the finished products. That could be one of the governing factors for other industries. As a result, the industries which are footloose does not form a basis for distinct industrial regions. They could be established anywhere, and again you have labor intensive industries which are established close to the source of labor, despite of the fact they were prior industries or not. So if you have cheap labor and it requires a lot of industrial labor, they would establish an industry in the location close to the labor availability. Now the role of institutional factors in Indian agriculture, again a very direct question. It talked about the colonial times when you had a small fragmentation of land holdings. There was a kind of consolidation that took up, and after land consolidation there was updating of the records and then finally redistribution of the land. This led to abolition of numerous intermediaries, and there were numerous tenancy reforms that came up in agriculture which reformed the agriculture drastically. The next is, what do we understand by young India? So when we talk about young India, it's mainly the working population. If we look at the UN statistics, you would see India has exceptionally young population. If we look on to Russia and Japan, they have negative youth population. So you have the group of BRICS nations, where you have Brazil, China and India as some of the major leaders. So you have these countries which are really producing huge number of youths, and these youths could be used as an asset and an active workforce in most of the industries and agricultural sector. Now next question is feasibility of interlinking of rivers. Now when we talk about interlinking of rivers, the main idea here is you have Ganga, Brahmaputra in the north, which are mainly flood prone rivers. So you have the region which is flood prone, and on the other hand you have areas of Rajasthan which are drought prone. If you have canals that connect the flood prone rivers to the small tributaries and the small rivers to the other regions of India, what would happen is the waters from the flood prone area would divert to the drought prone area. As a result, all of the country would have a kind of equitable distribution of water that would give more employment opportunities, more economic forces that would come into force into the regions of dry and arid parts of country. So these are some of the positive aspects that we look on for interlinking of river. However, interlinking is also associated with some negative aspects. The most primary would be this would lead to imbalance, so you would have problems related to seismic hazards. Again, when you are diverting water within the nation, the amount of fresh water that is flowing into the sea would decrease. As an effect, it would affect the coastal marine life. So these are some of the negative points. You would have development of canals which would cost a lot. It would also lead to deforestation. Also, there would be problem related to rehabilitation of people that would exist. So you have both the pros and the cons that exist for interlinking, and you have to explain both of these here. The next question talks about agricultural productivity. So when we talk about the measurement of agriculture productivity, we basically focus on three aspects, that is land, labor and capital. So we talk about in terms of capital productivity, we talk about in terms of land productivity and labor productivity. And these are some of the major points that we consider under agriculture productivity. So you have to explain what is productivity, the major heads under which we understand productivity, the types of productivity, and then a regional distribution, saying that the regions of Punjab and Haryana are flourishing good in agriculture, in contrast to, I can say, the states of Odisha and Rajasthan which are poor in agriculture, or they lack in agricultural productivity. The next question is problems in the realization of benefits of globalization and liberalization in industrial sector in India. Now this is one of an interesting questions. So let's talk about a case study of, say, United States. United States, you had a lot of industries which were outsourced to China. As a result, China got a lot of labor which was employed into the industry. However, the main workforce from US was diverted to China. As a result, the middle class or the kind of people who are engaged into industrial units into US lost their jobs. However, we cannot bear this for a country like India. So what happens when you have a liberalization or globalization that comes up in the industrial sector? There is either a compete or a perish situation. That means the industries which are good would be able to compete, or the industries which are not good or are not viable would perish off. So that is the main thing or main issue, main concern that you need to understand in case of India. But in case of India, what is important is we need to preserve our existing industries, we need to bring in more industries, but we cannot afford that our industries are outsourced to another countries where you have more cheap labor that is available. So we cannot afford, for example, an industry to be outsourced from India to China because we say you have lower production cost in China. However, we require kind of industries in India which also use a kind of unskilled labor and unskilled manpower. So if that exists, what would happen? There would be all the unskilled jobs would be wiped off, and the on-job trainers which are skilled in a specific sector would lose their jobs. So we require India to maintain both kinds of industries even after globalization and liberalization. The next question is, city regions are territorial units for regional planning and development. So this is again a direct question. So what you need to explain is, for example, you can give an example for the National Capital Region of Delhi. You can say the growth is mainly attributed to population and migration. You can talk about central business districts for various regions and show they are the regional planning centers or the main centers for growth. The next question is snacks and the food security policy in India. Now when we talk about food security policy, there have been numerous policies that have come up, starting with the public distribution system. So public distribution system talked about distribution of food through ration cards. Then you have the National Food Security Mission, National Scheme for Promotion of Agriculture Mechanization, and so on and so forth. What we need to fight under the food security policy is basically hunger, malnutrition and poverty. However, there are snacks and food security policy. The main snag here is the failure of the public distribution system, which is attributed to poor quality of the food grains that are supplied under the PDS project. You have the illegal ration cards that people hold, and it points to the incorrect mass, referring that people who really do not require get ration from the PDS through the PDS system, and those who really require are not able to avail that resource. So there is a kind of failure of the public distribution system. That is one of the major issues under the food security policy. And finally, you have the poor management for the storage of the food that leads to rapid perishing of the food. The next is demographic dividend and its implication on the socio-economic environment. So demographic dividend is a range of say 20 to 30 years where there is a sudden fall in the mortality rates or the death rates with an increase in an average life expectancy. So when you have a sudden rise in the life expectancy rate and a decrease in the death rate, you would have a change in the demographic transition model that could be seen. As a result, you would have various implications which would be either short term or long term. Now if we talk about India specifically, the south and the western part of India have already undergone most of the demographic transition. However, the east and the northeast are still lagging behind under the demographic dividend. So what we need to understand is, once the country is out of this demographic dividend phase, you could consider the pace for future development. The next is planning of tribal regions in India. Now, this you must start with the 5th 5-year plan, which talked about the tribal sub-plan. Then in 1996, there was a scheme for grain banks in tribal villages. In 98, you had the integrated tribal development projects that came up. You had tribal research institutes that were established. And finally, in 2001, you had the Scheduled Tribe Financial Development Corporation that was established. So, these are some of the main key things that you must highlight in your answer. Again, the map location question, we have covered this at this link. The next question is geopolitics of Indian Ocean revealed. Again, a very direct question, you need to simply answer that. So, you need to focus on two basic things, that's the strategic importance of Indian Ocean and the main idea that Indian Ocean acts as a oil line for the West. The next question is comment on the basis for the creation of new states in India in 2000. So, in 2000, 3 basic states were created, Chhattisgarh, Uttaranchal and Jharkhand. The reasons for each of the state were different. Chhattisgarh, it was mainly the caste distinction which was led by Brahmins and the Khurmis. They talked about that the Chhattisgarh, which is a new state separated from Madhya Pradesh, has a huge number of tribal population and should be segregated. So that was the basic idea. When we talk about Uttaranchal, it was mainly the economic and the cultural distinctiveness, and they wanted to preserve their culture. So the hills of Uttaranchal was heavily populated by Brahmins, so they wanted themselves to be segregated. Jharkhand, which came up as a new state from Bihar, it's mainly tribal region. However, it includes only 35% of the population, but it still has 65% of the revenue in terms of the coal and the steel it has. So these were the 3 states and the reasons for the formation. The next is the basic indicators for development. So when we talk about development, you have 2 basic parameters, human development index and the physical quality of life index. When we talk about human development index, there are 3 ideas on which it is based: life expectancy, education and the per capita income. When we talk about the PQLI, it's basically the literacy rate, infant mortality rate and the life expectancy that exists. So you have each of these which have these basic characteristics that you need to discuss, and ultimately you can say these are the key ideas and the development that we need to discuss. The next is, this is an interesting question and most of the students were struck here. Write a note on the emergence of national settlement system in colonial India. Now when we talk about national settlement system, it was basically a 3-tier system which was based on macro, meso and micro level. The macro level talked about nation as a whole, meso level talked about regional analysis and micro level talked about the rural analysis. Now, what the colonial period was focusing was basically an idea that there should be no one region which would have a single point of power. That means, under colonial period, there was absence of single point of power and there was a strong regionalization with multiple sub-regional centers that existed. There was not a single big center that was established under the colonial period. The main reason was that under colonial regime, they did not wanted India to emerge as a power under one hand. So that was the main drawback that this idea faced, and here you need to explain the mercantile model and the Plantopolis model. So under Plantopolis, mercantile model we have already covered in our postal course. Plantopolis model is basically talking about an idea that you have market area or a urban city center and you have small plantations that come up. Slowly and gradually what happened, there was marginal farms that started popping up between the plantation regions, and finally this urban center that existed started to grow and expand. So it was this pattern that led to formation of a kind of national settlement system under colonial period. Now, what are the factors that contributed to urbanization post-independence? Now, if we talk about 1901, there was only 11% of the urban area that existed. However, under 2011, it was more than 31% of the urban areas that existed. So, the main idea here is post-independence, pre-independence, there was kind of stagnation in the urban growth. However, post-independence, there was rapid opportunities in terms of economy. There was infrastructural development. There was more funds that were flowing in. There was expansion of government services that took place. Migration of people that started, advent of industrial revolution, I could say. So these were some of the major reasons, primary reasons that attributed to post-independence period and the development in the urban sectors. The next is define slums and explain their problems. So when we talk about slums, here you have the basic problems that the slums deal with. So the basic problem, basically you need to highlight it under these heads. So you have very high incidence of communicable diseases, poor air and water quality, social problems, criminal problems, problems related to crime, indoor pollution. So these are some of the major pollutions, and when you are defining slums, you can use this kind of definition to explain what are slums. The next is Vision 2020 and the development of rural areas. Now Vision 2020 under Vajpayee government focused on the concept of Pura, that is providing urban amenities to rural areas. So when you talked about providing urban amenities to rural areas, there were few key things that were highlighted. First was the people's participation, including the rural development. There should be a kind of inclusive rural development, and the basic idea was to convert the small rural clusters into a kind of territorial production units. So they should not be simply rural areas, but they should be production complexes or production units, and to increase the forward and the backward linkages that exist in the rural areas. The next question is identifying the earthquake prone zones. Now we have this in the postal course, again a direct question. You need to mark out the earthquake prone zones, and the good strategy for management talks about earthquake resistant buildings. You have early warning systems, prevention, mitigation and preparedness is the key aspect. Impact of linguistic diversity on the development of various regions in India. So India is also known as a museum of language. In 1950 you had 22 languages which were at the first round approved by Constitution of India. So amidst so much languages, you have a kind of regional diversity that exists. However, this diversity leads to problems of regionalism. People have come up with the demand for separate states, and there is kind of breaking down of the country into much smaller states because of the problems of linguistic diversities. There is formation of regional political parties. There are issues related to border disputes that exist. There are some of the case studies that you can cite. For example, under Belgaum you have Marathis versus Kannadigs. In Assam you have Bengalis versus Assamese. So you have problems that definitely exist because of linguistic diversity. However, when explaining the fact, we can say India is a land of diverse languages and diversity. The next question talks about how urbanization creates air and water pollution in India. Again a direct question, urbanization leading to haphazard development of cities, urban sprawls. All this lead to problem of water and air pollution. So you have development of slums, you have improper sanitation networks that exist. So all these things you must discuss here. So with this we cover the 2013 paper. We will be covering 2014 and 15 paper in the next coming sessions. Wish you good luck for your upcoming mains. Have a good day ahead.